And now, episode 8, The Big Splash. Take a look at the cover of Chapter 6. Chapter 6, The Big Splash. As Time Out begins to surface with her head clear with their clear like dome helmet intact, something happens and the dome suddenly retracts, causing her to become engulfed in water, as you saw in the picture with her hair. She quickly holds her breath and within seconds does reach the surface. Now, her once fluffy, full body of hair is fully drenched and flattened, much like her neighbor Kishai Snyder's cat, called Stormy, after a monthly flea bath. Bailey begins to tread water and finds it particularly difficult with one boot filling up with water, by contrast with the other shoeless foot moving effortlessly through the current. It brought her a small amount of joy to feel the current. It brought her a small amount of joy to feel the water mercilessly passing cathartically between each of her own toes and granting her a sense of liberation. She realized what she has to do. She knows she cannot continue to tread water with her one boot filling up with water and becoming like an anchor more so than a fish fin. So she kicks off the boot from her foot, sending it to its own watery grave below. In that instant of time, she felt a sense of exuberance as the liberation of her newly unclothed foot felt the joy of being in unison with the other. Treading water now becomes much easier. A few seconds passes as she looks upward toward the hill and sees no one. She's relieved. Bailey slowly makes her way swimming, floating, and trending of water to the shoreline until she reaches a spot where her feet can reach the bottom and can walk ashore. She smiles with relief as the tips of her toes touches the surface below, and the ooze of sand and dirt squishes between her toes. A strange form of euphoria warms her at the bottom of the lake, changes into a silky surface that seems to kiss her feet. She smiles to herself as the soft, muddy floor bottom is almost therapeutic, as it almost causes her to giggle with pleasure. As she continues to make it to shore, she begins to know a crunching feeling under, as if walking on eggshells, and then notices the rocks begin to sharpen. She detours around them, walking the distance in parallel with the beach. She sees the sand cove above and moves to the desired path. The rows of trees nearby seem so welcoming, and her anticipation continues to grow with what she might find. As she moves closer, she sees someone coming out of the shadows and moving to the water edge. She can't quite make it out as the person involved escapes into a nearby shadows of the trees along the waterline. As she moves closer to the shadowy image, it becomes full frontal. Oh no, she sighs to herself. It's Bigfoot. She doesn't know what to do. He's so big that she fears he can rush in on her and she would not be able to get away. He might even drown her, she feared. Her stomach sinks again as she thinks to herself, Murphy's Law. Ha! Murphy should have it as good compared to me. Her arms and her back continue to ache from all the treading of water. She fears she only has two choices. One, go to the shore and surrender to the beast and possibly get torn to pieces, or end up becoming Mrs. Bigfoot. Or maybe even a third choice. she can just stay there and wait for him to come in and drag her to the shore. Bailey was sure going out back to the sea was not an option because of drowning. My computer's slowing up. Come on, boot it up. Bigfoot finally reaches a direct parallel to her. He takes a few steps into the water and with both surprise and fear recoils and moves back to the shoreline. He begins to furiously shake his fist in the air, waving them back and forth as if demanding her to come back to the shore. Bailey is surprised that he doesn't like the water, and for now, she feels very safe. But for how long? Was Bigfoot scared of the water in general, or was it only the waters here on Outland? Maybe it was something else that she did not know. Were there other dangers of the water here like on Earth? She knew Earth's waters were the homes of piranhas, sharks, water snakes, and other dangers. But with Outland, she just didn't know. With every passing second, Bailey's disposition becomes more rabid and frightening, almost waiting to explode. Its loud shrills insist that she give herself up to him as he fearfully stands away from the water. With each second that passes, the creature continues trying to build up his courage to go in after her in the water. He inches closer to the water and carefully places his feet to overcome his fear. Bailey begins to fear that her watery buffer may lose its continuity if the beast continues to build on its own self-confidence. She knows she's not safe and has to come up with another plan. So she moves up the coastline in the water up to her chest as the Bigfoot continues shadowing her every movement on the shore. He is relentless and growing ever bolder by entering the water a little deeper and at longer intervals. He now has moved up to his knees and is much closer to Bailey than he likes. And take note of the picture there. Then it hits her. A third option. An option that exists in the very part of her designated uniform from its inception. She still hoped it still worked. Her uniform head bubble mechanism that covers her head like a big mason jar was something that was very useful to her in the past. It could serve her again. Bailey remembered the last time she had used it. To her, it wasn't very long. She was helping Brady look for Sword Boy. From her, the memory was only 1 week ago. But on Outland, it was likely over 14 years. Bailey chilled at the memory of the mountain shaking and spilling out of dark smoke everywhere. She remembered it was a crisis and imperative that they leave Outland that night, and he needed to find Sword Boy. Brady had copied her power of an airtight helmet to look for Sword Boy through the dark smoke and poor visibility. She volunteered to help him as she too powered up her clear head dome. Somehow they had came across Bigfoot and spooked him. He ran past Brady and collided with Bailey, knocking her to the ground, rendering her unconscious for a short time. Bailey thought back to Brady's presentation on the yacht when Brady was showing everybody their each individual superpower. Brady even made a joke about how now she could go swimming without getting her hair wet. This was at this point a little late, but it could still serve her in another way. She reaches for the switch just underneath the collar of her suit and pushes the special release button. She hears a brief clicking sound as the bubble dome slowly moves upward from around her shoulders to her neck to join each other on the top of her head, creating a tight waterproof seal. After a series of short hisses and sounds, the process is complete with one final long hiss. The outside sounds of Bigfoot screaming his ferocious and vile sounds diminish quickly as she looks out through the opaque-looking glass helmet and begins to walk backward toward the deeper water. She does so slowly, keeping her eyes focused on Bigfoot, not wanting him to have a burst of courage and attack her. The water begins to crest her head as she continues to move backward until she is completely submerged underwater. A strange kind of awe is now felt deep within her as she looks out to the watery world through the protective glass helmet, as the light begins to wave goodbye to her with the ever-changing and moving air bubbles being created by her bare feet as she strolls along the watery floor. She is surprised that she doesn't rise to the surface with the usual buoyancy and concludes that it must have something to do with the suit. The suit must either increase her weight or do something with the gravitational force that allows her to walk underwater. In any case, she was glad that this system was working so well and smiles with relief that something is finally going right with her. She is suddenly struck with the beauty of the surroundings. The world around her is bursting with blue azure water, sporting generous amounts of assortments of curious small fishes of all colors and textures. The school of fish spice up the watery canvas all around her with more luminous and radiant shades of bright blues, green, and even reds. She suddenly becomes aware of where she is and how deep under the water she is. Now the realization causes her to nervously take shorter breaths, remembering that her oxygen supply in the glass bubble is probably limited to 5 minutes. What a strange feeling it is, and she muses to herself, as be able to stroll along the bottom of the lake. She's almost embarrassed at how sensuous this was to her toes. All these years of running up and down the hills and trails during her jogging days on Earth was now taking a back seat to this. She almost felt guilty in the pleasure that she was deriving from this. The chilly water and the sand beads passing between her toes with each step massaged her with no equal. She is amused at how she must look walking underwater with this large fish bubble on her head. She remembers a morning cartoon show that she used to watch when she was little called Diver Dan on Saturday mornings. Diver Dan was one of her heroes back then, and she always wanted to be like him. While he wore one of those large old cast iron helmets with oxygen fed to him through an air hose from above. She only had a glass dome with her nose. But while it is much limited in scope, she felt a sort of kingship at that moment. As she continues to stroll along the bottom of the lake, a large fish casually swims by her and then unexpectedly accelerates right past her like a fast-moving car in a passing lane. She continues to stroll forward, and again, the large fish passes and repeats the same act again. Other smaller fish seem to disappear, and she wonders why. She stops walking and slowly turns around to see where the fish may have went. But they're all gone. She turns back around and again sees that one large fish swimming slowly around her and then begins to glow brilliant shades of blue and green from his body. This at first startles her, but then she remembered the time of her when her and Judge spent some time in Puerto Rico with Marie on one of her vacation tours from the travel agency that she worked for. She was invited to join Marie to bathe in the stars. Bailey's face curled with pleasure at the memory of that event. The animated look she saw on her daughter's face showed her that she felt the same way. She had assumed it would be some big Hollywood personality or some celebrity that they were going to rub shoulders with, but of course she was wrong. Instead, she was invited to swim at night in a place called Bioluminescent Bay in Puerto Rico. What made this place so special was that at night, the small fish would light up the water as they moved around you in a water, giving the appearance of someone bathing in the stars. It was truly beautiful and magnificent, a real sight to behold and a wonderful experience to have. She remembered how amused she was when Champ explained to her about how this was one of the highest concentrations of fluorescent aquatic organisms in the world, and a few people ever had the experience that Marie and I just had. Champ explained further that these little creatures were called phylogelids, and they would glow a beautiful greenish blue light at night as they swam along the shoreline. The delightful memory comes to an end when an automated voice comes on and whispers in her ears, 60 seconds. She pushes forward and suddenly becomes buoyant once again as she begins to float to the surface. The seconds pass, and she has yet to reach the surface. She now realizes how deep underwater she was. So she begins to swim faster upward, knowing she must reach the surface before she runs out of air. She looks up and sees the bright sun from her as she nears the surface of the water. Bailey takes her last deep breath and kicks steadily with her feet in perfect rhythm for the needed propulsion and moves steadily to the surface. Once she breaks the surface breaks the surface of the water, the bubble automatically retracts as Bailey inhales deeply. Her head begins to swim and she feels a bit nauseous from all this. She continues to tread water and floating on her back until this passes. Bailey's timeout face mask has shifted from her face, obstructing some of her vision from her right eye. She reaches up to straighten it out, and something comes to view from a previous blind side that she was very happy to see: the shoreline. Her jubilance is somewhat lessened when she spots Bigfoot still on the shore, moving along the edge of the water to let her a good couple hundred yards waiting for her to surface. He continues to look straight ahead as Bailey begins to pray for him not to look her way and spot her. She has had enough of Mr. Big, Tall, and Hairy. She pushes the bubble switch, and again it encloses around her head with a new fresh air supply to breathe. Once again, as she begins to descend. Once she reaches the bottom, she notes the difference of the slope and decides to walk closer to the shore toward the shallower water and to continue her trek. Again, she's surprised by the sudden appearance of that strange-looking fish again with big cow eyes and big lips. A fish. But this time the fish is acting differently. It's no longer glowing, but swims closer at her and begins to gawk at her face. She thinks back on some of her jogging days when she was frequently shouted by the neighbor's dog called Scrapper as a tag-along, and the way she dealt with him was to ignore him. He would eventually get tired and would go off somewhere. She thought about doing this to the fish the same way, but this was going to be very difficult to do. The fish is both strikingly in appearance and amusing as well. Bailey has never seen any fish like this in her life. This fish is about 4 feet long, with big cow eyes, large fat lips, and big horse-like teeth. She's so amused at how funny looking the fish is, she can't help herself but smile. The fish takes note of that and moves very close to Timeout's bubble head, as if to get a closer look. He turns his head to face her with curiosity, and he spontaneously smiles back at her. This concludes episode 8. Stay tuned for episode 9.